Trade shows are one of my favorite things. They are a fantastic way to build your brand, find leads, uh, and they're fun. Unfortunately, I have known a lot of sales teams and founders who show up to these shows. They don't really have a great plan in place. They don't really know what they're doing there. And then they get back after the show and they wonder, what's the ROI on this show? Why didn't that go well? After having done dozens and dozens of trade shows in my career with $100,000 budget and with literally zero budget, I think there's a really great formula to follow to prepare for, execute, and then follow up on every trade show so we get the most out of it. The number one thing that we need to remember about trade shows is they are expensive. They are very expensive. We just spent a ton of money on these leads. And so it's just simply not acceptable to spend all that money and not get anything out of it. It's not acceptable to go to a trade show with no plan and just wing it. We have to be good stewards of the money that we've got. We have to squeeze every ounce of juice out of the leads that we get. And so therefore, we need to follow a formula, prepare ahead of time, execute correctly, and then follow up diligently. That's what this workbook is designed to do. This is a way to prepare for every single show that you're going to. It asks a couple of really basic questions. It helps us prepare and build out a calendar. And then ultimately, it gives us a plan to follow so that we do get the most out of the leads that we just paid to acquire. So it's broken into a couple of different sections here, as you can see. The first one is really analyzing the show itself. A very common question is, well, how do I know what shows are good? Is this going to be the right show for me? We can do that by asking a couple of questions about it. First off, let's just describe the show. What is the target audience of this show? Who is going to be showing up there? You can look through the previous attendee list. You can look through the speakers. You can look through the prospectus on the website, and get a really good sense. Are the leads that I'm trying to reach, the titles of the people, going to be at this show? Yes or no? If yes, keep moving. If no, throw the show away. The second question is, what's the purpose of the show? What conversations are we likely to have? There's a lot of conferences that are dedicated solely to people sitting in classrooms, learning things in order to keep their licensing fresh, things like that. Are they going to be having the types of conversations that I want to sell? We spent a lot of money one year going to a trade show in Florida because we saw that payers were going to be there, big insurance companies, and we were like, ka-ching, payers, that's who we're going after. It wasn't until we got like a day and a half into the show that we realized, oh, these are all the lawyers at these big payers who are trying to learn about new state regulations for this year. So once we got there, we realized, okay, the show was correct. The purpose of the show didn't really work for us. And so it wasn't a great show overall. And then third, let's start making our list. Who are the vendors and the speakers that we want to be talking to? Usually this can be found on the website. We're looking for a couple of things that we'll talk about a little bit later. But overall, do we have a sense of who's going to be at this show, what the purpose is, and do we really feel like we could go there and have the conversations we want to be having? The second thing that we really need to ask ourselves and be very honest is why? Why are we going to this show? What is the desired outcome for me at this show? For the enterprise, for my company at this show? There's a bunch of different reasons one might go to a show. I don't love taking all the reasons and spreading them on a piece of toast. I think we need to be really clear with the one major goal, and then everything else can be kind of secondary. Again, we spent a lot of money to be at this show. And so every minute that we're at that show needs to be spent driving forward our desired outcome. If we're not driving forward that desired outcome, then we're wasting our time. So lead generation is typically the number one reason somebody's going to be at a show. Maybe you just want FaceTime with your clients. You want to network, ask questions, learn about the industry. Maybe you've got a new pitch that you've been working on and you just want to practice it. So we're going to the show to say it as many times as we can and really hone that pitch. There's all kinds of reasons. I typically say highlight up to two, but really there should be one very clear reason why we're going to that show. And all of the rest of our planning drives that desired outcome. And then you're going to want to put that into a sentence. I'm going to the show to build a pipeline of net new leads. I'm going to the show to move 5 existing clients down the sales funnel. And then, like I said, every minute you're at that show, your number one priority is driving that desired outcome. When you've achieved that, then you can go on, you can have fun, you can go to your happy hours, you can goof around with your friends, but do not lose sight of the primary goal of this show. And then the third question we want to ask is, who is going to be there? This is where we start to build our lead list. This is where we start to build our strategy for time spent on the floor. What competitors are going to be there? Do I want to see them? Do I want to visit them secretly, blatantly? Who are my competitors that are going to be there? Who are my clients that are going to be there that I can set up meetings with, or that I can try and make introductions to other people that might be helpful to them? And then who are my friends that are going? Who do I know that's going to be on the show? Can I ask them to make introductions for me? Can I make introductions for them? Knowing these things ahead of time is really going to help us prioritize our time and make a really good plan for the show. So now that we have that answered, we know why we're going, we know the show is really good, and we have a general sense of who's going to be there. That's where we start to build the go-to-market strategy, the sales strategy, things like that. A lot of times people want to see ROI from a trade show, and you should. It's very expensive. The issue with that is if you're really early stage, you may not actually have all the data that you need to prove the ROI. You might have to take some leaps. But if we're later in the stage, we have our sales cycle all set up, the math is very, very easy, right? So this is just an example, but in order to calculate ROI, it's super simple. If I have 100 leads, I know 60 leads will convert into meetings, and I know 30 of those meetings will turn into proposals, and I know 10 of those proposals will actually get to the LOI stage, and then I know I'll win 5 of those 10, right? So this is a really, really standard calculus that anybody can do to figure out what their close ratio is. So if I meet 100 leads at this show, I predict it will turn into 5 deals. And I know that one of my deals is worth $20,000. Therefore, if I can actually drive this number here, this show is going to be worth $100,000 to me. Super simple math. Then the question is, does this show cost less than $100,000? Probably. How much money do you need to make from this show in order to make it worth it? Some people say 10x, 5x, 3x, 1x. It just needs to pay for itself. I just need a customer. Whatever that is, do this back of the napkin math and really figure this out for yourself to say, great, if we spend $5,000 at a show, I predict we'll get $100,000 back. Nobody should say no to that. And of course, you want your metrics to align with your goals for the year. And so, again, just keeping in mind, what are we going to do? The budgeting is really, really important, especially if somebody doesn't have a ton of trade show experience. People are very, very quick to sponsor booths. They're very quick to set up a table and hand out little flyers or pins or squishy balls. I have found limited success with that unless it really makes sense for the desired outcome that I'm trying to drive. So we should really think about where are we going to put our money. Obviously, we're going to the show, but is there any sponsorship we want to do above and beyond that? Do we want to get a booth? If so, what's the desired outcome of that booth? Why are we having this? Why are we choosing to stand behind a table for 6 hours a day as opposed to walking around the trade show floor? Don't spend the money unless you can prove that it drives the desired outcome you set for this show. Same with happy hours and events. What is the event? What's the desired outcome? Who do I hope is going to be there? What's our plan to make this go off well? Whoever's owning this trade show should know all of these things and have it practiced ahead of time. If we can't justify the reason for the happy hour, we shouldn't pay for it. Same with presenting on stage. I think people probably give stage presentation a little bit more credence than it should. Sometimes it can be really well, but again, it has to be part of the larger plan. It has to drive the desired outcome. What are we going to talk about? Also keeping in mind, getting on stage for a trade show typically gets booked a year in advance, several months. If the show is coming up in a couple of months, you probably missed your window to present. There's better things to do with your time, and think about getting on stage next year. And then advertising. Am I going to put my logo on lanyards, on the coffee cups? Somebody pushed really hard for me one time to sponsor the Wi-Fi at the show, but Wi-Fi is invisible. Why would I pay, why would I pay to put my logo on something that no human eye can see? Didn't make sense. So think about these things and really ask yourself, Are they driving my desired outcome? And what am I doing to prepare ahead of time to make sure that happens? Do not wing it. This is way too expensive. We spent way too much money on these leads to show up and just hope for the best. And then I would say the budget calculator is really important. I have had conversations with people where I ask, so how much is this trade show costing you? And they say, oh, about $2,000. Okay, that's how much the entrance ticket to the show costs. But there's a lot of other things that cost us money, right? We need to buy tickets for each person who's going. We need to be there for multiple nights. So that's a hotel. The tickets cost money, the flights cost money, the hotels cost money, the Uber costs money, the food costs money, everything costs money, and it adds up really, really quickly, right? So if you see this just based on like some, broad strokes math, to send 3 people to a trade show for 4 nights, that's like a $14,000 investment. So again, I need to make X number back in order for that to be worth it. Don't underestimate how expensive this show is going to be. That's not good stewardship of the marketing budget, and it'll get you in trouble really, really quickly. So we've got our budget set. We know what we're spending it on. Everything is driving towards the desired outcome. We need to ask ourselves a couple of more questions. One, where is all this data going? The entire purpose of the show is to gather leads, to get information, to test things. The data needs to be captured. It needs to be captured fast and in real time, probably. And so my question is, what's the CRM that we're using? Every new person we meet, what system are they going into that we're making sure we capture them? It does no good to go to a trade show, meet somebody, and then have no way to follow up with them. You just wasted your time and your money. And then we need to ask ourselves, how are we doing our outreach at the end of this, right? We're not planning just for the trade show. We're planning for the 8 weeks after the show when we're doing our outreach and trying to convert these new leads into meetings. So just make sure that you've thought through every new person that I'm meeting, where is their information going, where is it living, and what is my plan for them afterwards? So now we've done our planning. We feel really good about going to this trade show. It's time to execute and follow up. So this can be broken down into a couple of different phases. Before the show, several weeks before the show, we have a meeting. We get everybody that's going to this show together in a room and we have a kickoff. We state the desired outcome. We make sure that it's super clear. We assign everybody roles. Who is responsible for what? Who are you supposed to be talking to? What are your KPIs? How are they getting tracked? Everybody knows exactly what they're doing, and there are no questions going into this show of like, well, why am I flying all the way to Las Vegas? What am I supposed to be doing? We set these now so that in the follow-up phase, we can hold people accountable. Again, it's not acceptable for me to pay for one of my salespeople to fly to a trade show, all this money, and then not have really clear KPIs so that I cannot judge whether they did a good job or not. That's bad. We have to be able to say, this is your responsibility. This is your metric for success. And then we're following up. Did you hit that? Yes or no? If yes, great, fantastic. If no, we need to talk about it. So we set up our prospect meetings. This is probably one of the simpler things to do. We know who our list of targets are. Maybe the show has like an app that you can use to message people. Maybe you get their contact list. And the real question is, what are we offering these people? What is our ask? What are we saying to them? This is basic marketing and sales, but there should be a really clear ask or an offer or some kind of good news that we have to present to these people. We want to, weeks ahead of the show, we want to know exactly what that is so that we can hammer it out and have it down, be able to get it off our tongue as soon as we can. So in setting up our prospect list, what's our offer? What's our ask? What do we want these people to do after we meet with them that drives our desired outcome? And then for the follow-up, right? You don't just meet a lead and they magically become a customer. We're going to have to work these leads. We're going to have to work them 1 week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks after the show. People are going to come into our pipeline that won't convert for months. And so we need to have a really good plan of what are we saying? Who are we saying it to? When are we saying that to them? And who is saying it? Who owns this lead follow-up? We cannot spend money gathering leads that never get followed up on. Huge problem. So we need to plan out our scripts. We need to know who's calling, what are they saying on the call, what emails are going out and when. We need to plan all of this ahead of time. Do this work now. That way you can execute on it later and all that work is done. If we leave that well, that's after the show. I'll work with that after the show. We've missed it. We've missed our boat, and we just lost a huge opportunity to get the most out of this trade show. So do this work ahead of time, make a plan, and then sales is nothing except following a plan. The show itself, if we've done all the prep work, takes care of itself. It's the easiest, funnest part of the show. We're collecting data, we're reporting on it, we know where it's living, we know what we're saying. Everybody's out there having fun, they know exactly who they're supposed to be going after. The show is a cakewalk. Then the post show comes, and this is the most important part. The post show is why we went to the show. The show itself is not why we went to the show. The post show is why we went to the show. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we post-mortem this show. Everybody that was at the show gets back together, and first of all, they ask, did we hit our KPIs? Each person is accountable to their KPIs. Somebody was owning and collecting and tracking. And so, did we do what we said we were going to do? If yes, fantastic. If no, we need to talk about that. We need to figure out what we learned and how that will change the course of our business moving forward. Did we achieve the desired outcome? When will we know that? What sort of things, new information, new data points, odd conversations did we have? And what do we do with that information? We need to deliver this back to product because we got some really interesting feedback. I came up with a great idea to try to add to our roadmap. When can we do that? So do not skip synthesizing the learnings from this show into changes in your business. And then the follow-ups, right? So these are the metrics that need to be reported on every single week in the sales meeting. Do not let this show go. If you are running your sales team, ask about this show every single week. How many leads did we get at the show? How many of them are net new status, have not been contacted yet? How many of them have converted and said, hey, yeah, I'd love to talk, let's have a meeting or whatever? How many of them are disqualified, they declined to meet? And how many of them are still in progress? Meaning I've reached out to them, but I haven't heard back, so I'm still touching them. And then what phase are they at in the cadence that we planned? Reporting on these every single week is how we build accountability into the team. It's how we get the most out of these leads. Nothing falls through the cracks, nothing disappears. Make sure that you do that. That is so key. Do not forget about this trade show the day you get home from it. So in general, this is sort of, you can think about it in terms of a calendar, right? 3 weeks away from the show, we kick it off. 2 weeks away from the show, we start doing our outreach. A week away, we just get the team ready. We're ready to launch. We do the show. The week after the show, we start our follow-up. We have our post-mortem. The team talks about it. In 2 weeks, we're still reporting on our KPIs. And then for in weeks, however long we built a cadence, 8-week cadence, 5-week cadence, 6-month cadence, every single week we're checking in on this until we can say, hey, we hit our desired outcome, or we've finished with these leads. They're all either converted or DQ'd. And then again, in +1 weeks is reporting on the desired outcome. Did we hit it? And is this show a good investment for us next year? Should we spend more money next year? Maybe get a booth? All of these things are going to make sure that when we go to the show, pay for the show, we get the most out of the show.